Okay, we're going to go on to voice and hello.
Take your time. Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Well, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Okay.
And this is a whole new story. This is a very important story. This is related to the death of Max Spears.
My name is John S. Kaplan
only from a story
III,
point of view.
I'm from Portland, Oregon, obviously in America. And my girlfriend is Tiffany Jenks, who was murdered on October 8th of 2013 near our home in Portland, Oregon. The murder and the facts leading up to her murder are all strange, to say the least, and they were never used in any way for her murder investigation. Tiffany had told me on several occasions that not only was she going to die and or they were going to take her away, but she was coming to the conclusion that she was under mind control. And the biggest reasons that she came to those conclusions were I made her stop taking pills and stop drinking by taking her to treatment twice. During the time in which she got sober, she was becoming clear that there was a sinister plan for her, and she knew it. And so she began to become paranoid that they were going to kill her, and then, of course, they eventually did, according to the media and police, but, whatever on that. But more importantly, she had recorded with her therapist, who's a licensed therapist downtown Portland, and currently, and still, his name is Jonathan K. Weedman, Weedman. Jonathan Weedman, who's a psychotherapist in Portland, Oregon, was Tiffany's therapist, and 4 days prior to her being killed, he told her several things in a 1-hour session that she had with him, but primarily such things as you have him saying, "Don't tell anybody who you are or you'll be shot." He also told her, "No hiding. She'll get the answers when she dies." And Tiffany said in one of the recordings, "Tell me more about this place," as if she was going to another world or another place. But the therapist and the recordings, in addition to what I said, he takes his pen or some device and goes tap, 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 follow the yellow brick road. And her voice changes to a baby. Now, since the time in which her death, which was October 8, 2013, and the 5 or 6 months after that date, I had never heard of the Illuminati or the New World Order. So all the time while Tiffany was trying to tell me things like, "You have no idea who I am, and when you find out, I'm afraid of what's going to happen." She also said, when this great family found out I was in love, they said no, and I had to ruin us just to stay alive. And so as Tiffany was learning, because of her father had died in 2010, and it was 2013 when she died at age 35. But after she had learned that she was a mind control victim, she was seeking help for that. In the recordings with her therapist, she tells him that she's a mind control victim, but she uses words that I was unfamiliar with. And I don't know off the top of my head exactly what those words were, but he says, "The only one that's controlling you is you." And then he does the tap, 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 follow the yellow brick road. So 6 months had gone by since her murder, and I'll discuss the murder in a second, and I was in a restaurant eating, and I met a gentleman named Clyde Lewis, who is the talk show for iHeartRadio. It's called Ground Zero in Portland, Oregon. Now, Clyde it was just a miracle that I met him, but he met me, and he did a show that night after meeting me in the restaurant called Grasping at Broken Straws. And about 50 minutes into the radio show, he talks about meeting some guy in a restaurant. That guy is me, and he's talking about Tiffany. Now, after that show that he did with talking about me and Tiffany, but didn't say names, he calls me on the phone in a frantic and tells me, "Why didn't you tell me she was Illuminati?" And I said to him, "Clyde, what is that? I don't even know what that means. I thought Illuminati was a cartoon." So the next day, I had sent out a lot of emails that night about the Illuminati, and I got a response from the thief / / not a Christian, Fritz Springmeier,
Yes.
who invited me to come to his home and show him all my stuff. And I did, or actually I requested, can I show you my stuff? In 15 minutes, he confirmed that Tiffany was a monarch slave for the New World Order. Now, as I was seeking help, I didn't know that he's a scumbag and a thief, but he stole $34,000 from me. That's a whole other subject. But bottom line is, I left for New York seeking help both in Washington, D.C. and New York while he was making my store deposits and stole my money. But here's the point, is that he told me she was a monarch slave. Now, once I found out that, now this was 6 months after she was dead, I was able to take all of her words to me, gatekeeper, time stopper, heart of darkness, and just lots of weird things I never heard of. The crow, she said, differentiate myself from the crow. Dark angels, she talked about dark angels, and she talked also in the separate conversations about aliens, but we'll get into that later. But, so Tiffany, prior to her death, had told me that not only that they were going to kill her, but that they were going to take her away and I would never see her again. And she believed there were two worlds. Okay? And so I just have all the information. I don't have the facts because, of course, like I said, I didn't have any knowledge of this ever in my life. So, but shortly after her murder, October 8, 2013, I was investigating, and nothing made sense. The police were lying, the courts were lying, her family was lying, and nobody was helping me. And in fact, they sent 10 other monarch slaves in to monitor my actions, of which, when you don't know what they are, you're like, oh, great, new friends, but not really. And so now I know completely when they send somebody, but at that time, they had sent in 10 different monarch slaves, both before she died and after she died, to help me. But after Fritz Springmeier told me Tiffany was a mind control victim for the monarchs, or for the New World Order, it was about a month after that we were having dinner, me and him, and he said, well, John, they want to control the dams. And I about fell off my chair because I had never told him what her job was. And that was that she ran the dams for the Bonneville Power Administration, which their main office is in Portland, Oregon, and they control all the water on the Columbia River, which is I think the third largest river in America, but it goes from Canada all the way down through towards the ocean, of course. And so it was her job to control the flow of the dams. Now, she had made comments to me a lot, but putting all those aside, she recorded herself with her therapist because she knew that they were setting her up to die. And as luck would have it, or bad luck, it depends on which side you think, Tiffany had my phone. And technology for the first time had caught up with the Illuminati because even though they had deleted her iCloud out 100%, okay, when I got into that empty iCloud account, because her mother gave me the passwords, and then later lied in court and said I got hacked in, but that's a lie. But she gave me the password Tiffany and her favorite school teacher, which was Chuck Steves. Now, upon getting into Tiffany's iCloud, it wasn't that she had anything in her iCloud that was valuable. It was that when I put the applications back on my phone that she had, it saved the audio files, of which there were 6. 2 with her therapist, 2 with a cab driver talking about dying and waking up in another city, like, in other words, a fake murder, and aliens, and then some other miscellaneous ones. And what it all boiled down to in the recordings, of which I posted most of them online on Tiffany Jenks, a Google search for YouTube, the ones that I'm able to without getting my stuff shut down, of course. But what it came down to was that here Tiffany fell in love, and they were telling her, absolutely not. You could not be in love with this person, it's not the bloodline type thing. And in fact, the therapist says, well, whatever this fella tells you, that's me, by the way, disregard. And Tiffany goes, how can you say that? He can save the world. So even though I hadn't seen her in a month prior to her murder, she was clearly in love, and showed that by her recordings that she made with her therapist that were all about being in love and not wanting people to die. Now, she talked about the dams. She talked about dams, and a lot of people were going to die. The context of which is clearly probably over my head or pay scale. So I don't understand what it is that they were all alluding to. But here's the part I do know 100% for sure. Tiffany was a mind control victim, and she was in full control of 21 dams on the Columbia River from the main office of the Bonneville Power Administration in Portland, and she talked about a lot of people dying. In addition to that, for the 12 months prior to me meeting her, of which she did not work any longer at the dams, which I'll go over that later, Tiffany had $192,000 US dollars in 12 months prior to me meeting her for medical, for suicides and pills, of which it's my belief they were trying to kill her. Now, when she met me, it was just kind of like a random, she was actually at a rental house of mine, and I met her, I believe, by chance, and then she never left and she fell in love. Now, that love, they were very concerned about because A, she's not allowed love, and B, especially with a guy that would have never been a part of this, destructive cult. So Tiffany was confiding in me about this stuff, even though I didn't have any clue about it. And then after she got killed, I was investigating the murder just because the police were 100% lying. And at this point, I'll ask you if you have any questions so far, and then I'll go over the murder part with you.
Well, what was? It seems that they wanted to control the dams. Was that
control
the real?
The dams? Not they want to. They did. Tiffany was a mind control victim without question because her doctor hypnotized her, going tap tap tap, follow the yellow brick road.
Yes, yeah.
Everybody knows that. So they did control the dams. Now, it would be really scary if they only wanted to, but if they did, and they did, then it's way past scary.
What was the result of that? Were they diverting water or starving certain areas, or what?
I don't have the way to know what their sinister plans are. I just know, based upon the fact that Tiffany ran the dams, and these people are horrible people, that you have to come to your own conclusion from there. But of course, for all the people that don't understand mind control, this story means nothing. But once you get mind control, and then you know she ran the dams, it becomes increasingly, absurd, if you will, that this has transpired. All the safety precautions in the world cannot stop a girl like Tiffany from being at the top position of the Bonneville Power Administration under mind control by her Illuminati family.
Do you think that was that water eventually used for drinking, or just pure power, electricity?
Well, you're talking about the Grand Coulee Dam, the Bonneville Dam. We're talking some of the world's largest dams. This is for power for sure, because they were doing insider trading so that the Illuminati had more money, I assume. But I believe, if I had to take a wild guess, and you look at how they are lying about 9/11, and oh, by the way, everybody that I've ever talked to, Clive Lewis and David Icke and Richi Allen, they all claim the same thing. The next 9/11 is supposed to be the dams. So if that's true, which none of us have a way to know the crystal ball of that, but if it's true, they had somebody in that key position. Now, do we know for sure that she herself would have taken it to that level herself? No. I believe that's probably the reason why she's dead, because she refused to be under their mind control. You got to know, too, that her father ran the Los Alamos Nuclear Laboratory. He was the head safety coordinator scientist by the name of Richard Johnson. Now, Rick Johnson was her father, and he changed his last name halfway through the marriage. Oh, wait, scratch that. His name was Richard Jenks, Jenks. He changed his last name to his wife's maiden name halfway through the marriage, and now, and after his death, rather, his name was Richard Johnson, which is Tiffany's mother's maiden name. Tiffany told me it was because he loved his wife, and that's why he changed his name. Because I asked her, why is it that they changed their name halfway through the marriage? So, anyways, just so when people look up the last name Jenks or Johnson, they're both related. One's Tiffany's mother, and one's Tiffany's father's, real names. So, yeah.
It must involve contracts or something to stop people tracking contracts, or some kind of line of.
I don't know. I know that they have a substantial amount of money. They live on a 3,000-acre ranch. I will tell you that in terms of the murder itself, there are so many pathetic facts surrounding the murder and the unfair way in which her family both demonized me and tried to stop me from solving the murder. You got to remember that for those people that are far removed from your life or now my life, they have no clue what being under attack means. and neither did I. I had no clue. And that's probably why I reached out to Vanessa about her upcoming experiences in dealing with these people who try to stop justice. So for people that don't get being under attack, they actually took me to court to shut me up and succeeded. And it wasn't until I went all the way to the Oregon Court of Appeals that they reversed the order, and then it was later dropped. But the public needs to know that I was stopped from telling the truth about a murder, and that's absurd.
What I'm trying to figure out is if they could control of the dams, is it energetic control?
Well, I think that first of all, it's everybody's life, okay? Because if they can, and this is always speaking hypothetically, I don't know what their plans are because I'm not them. They could burst the dams and cause them to break, as you see in the Orville Dam here in California.
Yes, I saw that, the overflow on that. But that was by making sure the overflow was weak, and then by overflowing it then starts degrading the bank.
Of course. And here's what we do know, and I'm sure you would agree with this. We don't know anything about what they're capable of because it's so far over the top of pathetic. It's not even something that a human brain, and I call us humans, human brain can grasp. They are so bad of people that you don't even know what their possible plans are.
Well, so they're being rumored that there are.
All they would have to. What's that?
There's rumors that there's ET facilities built into the dams.
Well, I do know that Tiffany talked a lot about aliens. I will tell you that I never heard of it. In fact, one gentleman told me shortly after her murder. I talked to a guy in New York, a famous author. I forgot his name, and he told me, John, don't ever say Tiffany Jenks is dead. And I said, what are you talking about? And then when he went on to aliens, I sadly hung up on him because it was so far past my brain comprehension at that time. Now I know more, and I feel bad because I do believe that he had some truth to his words. It's just that my brain couldn't comprehend them. So Tiffany had talked about the aliens, and I will say one of her Google searches that were found after she died, shortly before her murder, was the Gunderson. What's his name? The gentleman who talks about the aliens? Bill Gunderson, I think.
God, there's a lot of people.
The famous American that worked for the NASA or whatever. I don't know. But my point is that Tiffany was talking with this gentleman.
Oh yes, he's been on Project Camelot a lot.
Excuse me?
Yeah, he was on Project Camelot. I think there's a guy interviewed by Kerry Cassidy a lot about all this. But the other thing is the Los Alamos connection means that there must be a German intelligence agency connected with this, possibly.
Well, I would say that Tiffany told me that her family took a 4-year trip to Europe, and I believe it's even in your state, or your country, rather, and I will look that up and find it for you.
I'm interested in places in Austria or the Czech Republic or Germany.
It was in outside, somewhere in the UK, I believe, or Manchester. But anyways, I think it's even on her obituary or somebody's, or her father's obituary. So Tiffany's obituary would be Tiffany Jenks' obituary.
Well, I'm interested in what you said about Manchester.
I don't know, but so here's my point. Tiffany's family spent 4 years in London, somewhere outside of London. And my point about this is that a lot of the stuff that we are experiencing have direct connection to parts of those countries. And if she was not even dead, because some people tell me she's not, that's where they would have taken her, would have been to that place where she has a childhood connection. But the most important reason why some people have claimed that she would not even be dead and it's a fake murder is because they need her for a later date for the New World Order for the dams.
What part of England was it? At West of London? Was it West London or what?
I don't have a clue. I'll have to look that up. I don't have it in front of me. I would have to track it down again. It's on the internet. One of her friends said that she went to school there when she was a kid, and I know her family. Her father was a nuclear scientist exchange program, and he was sent there for 4 years. But I will get you that information later.
I mean, she probably went to a fairly high-class school, so it's some very nice schools there.
Yeah, I would imagine. imagine.
what we call a public school, or what you would call a private school.
Yeah, I mean, she went to public schools in Oregon and got her, biology and business, and she was a scientist working for the Bonneville Power. So, I mean, she was extremely educated.
So it's I think the background to where I think the solution to this is going to be in the early childhood, in the background of where she comes from. Los Alamos and all this is a red rag.
Yeah. Keep in mind, I don't know, and you know this more than anybody, but the general public really has a hard time connecting the dots. And I think this is the first time in history. In fact, Kathy O'Brien reached out to me. I mean, David Icke reached out to me, and a lot of people in the know, that understand this stuff, to them, they have been waiting for something like this for a long time, where you have concrete evidence. I mean, Miles, all you have to do is go type in Google and go, Tiffany Jenks, tap, tap, tap. Okay?
Yes.
Tiffany Jenks, tap, tap, tap. And you will hear the audio of the therapist hypnotizing her. Now, all these other mind control victims have been coming forward. In fact, I think there's probably about 1,000 of them now on my Facebook page, or rather Tiffany Jenks Murder Facebook page. And what they've done is they've said, with the evidence you've been able to put out there, well, it's undisputable. It's not my words, so it's not me. It's her doctor. So with those words, a lot of people now resonate with that because finally there's some proof, without a doubt, that this mind control stuff is real. And I'm not saying that it hasn't been real forever. It's just that the general public, if they don't hear it, they don't understand it. But with Tiffany's murder, as people look into her case, you will see it's not possible what the police claim to be true in her murder at all. And so you just connect any dots you want. Like you said, Los Alamos, okay, her father ran Los Alamos. Tiffany ran the dams, okay, she ran the dams. Or her murder, her killers got 13 months and a $200 fine. Two of the three, which are easily, you can look at them, they're mind control victims also. But Michelle Warden-Brosey and Josh Robinette, who were I call them the couple, they just claimed they didn't hear the gun go off, even though it was their gun. And they had taken off the serial numbers that day and sold it to the shooter.
Well, for the sake of this recording, briefly, what happened? Describe what the circumstances of the murder was.
Okay, well, prior to her murder, I got several emails days before saying she was going to die. It named names. It said John, Tony, Tyson, they want me to die in the email, of which it's posted online. So the day of the murder, she came to my home under mind control, and she looked at me crying, and she said, I'm not going to die tonight. I'm not going to die tonight. I'm not going to die tonight 3 times. She's also said to me, and that's in a recording I recorded on my phone. Prior to the recording, and what made me hit record was, she said, they want to kill me. And I said, Tiffany, why are you leaving? Why would you leave my house to go die? So Tiffany left my house shortly after. I poured her beers out and refused to let her drink on my property. And she went to the hotel, checked in, and she walked across the street to go die at the bar. She walked up to the bartender and told the bartender that night her life was over. She then walked outside of the bar. Now, mind you, here's the important part. She didn't go to one bar with these killers. She was outside smoking, and the 3 killers walked up to her. They all get in the car, and this is where it gets important for people to note, because it's not what the police claim, but this is the facts. The CCTV camera footage shows Tiffany and her 3 killers driving away at 2:11 a.m. She was dead 19 minutes later. But that's not the story the police tell. So let's review. Tiffany's outside smoking by herself, and the 3 killers walk up to Tiffany. And the police claim they could tell in the video that she met these people for the first time because they all shook hands. Okay, so that's the police claim. At 2:11, the 4 of them are all happy, and all 4 of them drive away to go kill Tiffany. Now, the 16-minute drive to Blue Lake Park, and that left 3 more minutes for the shooter to become so enraged at whatever Tiffany had said by the time she got in the car that he had no other choice but to shoot her in the head, of which they claim that's what happened. So they arrive at Blue Lake Park, some 16-minute drive, and within 3 minutes of arriving, Two people independently in their homes heard the gunshot at 2:30 a.m. With that said, from the point she got in the car to the time she was dead, it was 19 minutes. Now, here's what else the police claim. The police claim that the protected other mind control victims, which is Michelle Warden Brosey and Joshua Robinette, that those two, they didn't hear the gun go off. In fact, it was their gun. They took off the serial numbers that day to sell it to the shooter. Now, the shooter says he was set up on this murder, and I believe him. But he was also arrested with $7,000 in cash in his pocket when he got arrested. He's told the truth out of everybody, but Michelle and Josh, who did not hear the gun go off, who got back in the car after Tiffany was dead, didn't even know why Tiffany was not in the car. They went back to their hotel, the La Quinta Inn, molested Michelle's 9-year-old daughter, of which Joshua was charged for child rape, child molestation, but Michelle oddly wasn't. They got 13 months for their part in the murder. Okay, so they get back to the hotel, and they molest the child, and then they immediately, at the first bus out of town, drive the shooter to the Greyhound, where he takes the 13-hour bus ride back to California, and Michelle and Josh and the daughter, then they go to, the Michelle and Josh and the daughter run off to Kelso, Washington, where they change their hair color, change their cell phones, and the police claim that's unrelated to the murder. Yeah, okay. So, 10 days after the murder happens, the police had already known for sure who the killers were, but they hadn't made an arrest yet, because they were still trying to set me up on the murder. And finally, when they did make an arrest, they're like, oh, God, we know we have to. We got to make an arrest now. We don't have a choice. So once they made the arrest, they did everything they could to not tell the truth in her case. In fact, there were 5 witnesses to her murder. Get this. Not the bartender who knew Tiffany was going to die, not me who knew she was going to die, and not the therapist who knew she was going to die. Here's the 5 witnesses to Tiffany's murder. The 3 killers, Tiffany, who's dead, and me, and I was excluded from the murder, from the case. So, 5 witnesses to her murder, the 3 killers, Tiffany, who was dead, and me, and I was excluded from the case. So, here you have, I had at least 50 clues at the time of her death that said, something's wrong here. She told me she was going to die, and the police certainly knew she was going to die. In addition to that, the killers, while Tiffany was at my home that night, were circling the block, and my closed-circuit television cameras recorded their car going around 13 times. In addition to that, while Tiffany was at my house, the killers, Josh and Michelle, waited in the gas station parking lot, and the manager of the Chevron gas station at 82nd and Southeast Stark said, John, the killers were parked in our parking lot for 1 hour while Tiffany was at your home. So there was a plethora of information or clues to this murder. The problem is that, first off, the police were lying and involved, and second off, they shut me up, both emotionally because I didn't understand what was going on, and I kept getting promised lies that, oh, don't worry, we're working on the case, but they weren't. And then later, when I became public about it, like in a major way, they had a court order to shut me up, of which it expired based on my court of appeals, and I won. They were trying to stop me from having my recordings by claiming I had hacked into Tiffany's stuff illegally and whatnot. But the court of appeals agreed with me that I was cheated, and it was reversed. And so that's why I'm able to speak out now about the truth of this case. In addition to those facts right there, I will say 2 things. Tiffany recorded Joshua, her killer, and she had Josh's cell phone number in her phone. Police didn't care about that. So she recorded him buying a gun and all these things, and that recording's on Google as well, under Tiffany Jenks. The other thing is, and this involves the pharmaceutical stuff, Jonathan, who's Tiffany's hairdresser, and not related to Jonathan, the therapist, but Jonathan, who's Tiffany's hairdresser, told me, John, Tiffany received an email from a lady named Sandra Shotwell, who's involved in the pharmaceutical industry, telling Tiffany she's going to die 5 days before she was dead, but the words they used for die were spiritual enlightenment and manifest destiny, or I call it murder. They knew Tiffany was susceptible to believing that she was going to another planet or another world or another, spiritual realm, if you will. But And so I had all of this stuff, like for instance, her hairdresser told me that Sandra Shotwell contacted her about dying, but the police didn't care. In addition to that, in the recordings that I have for the cameras outside my store, you will see Sandra Shotwell walking by my store that night Tiffany died. In addition to that, you will see a video of the ex-district attorney, Jeffrey Dickey, walking by my store with the killer. You will see the killer walking by my store on the video. And this you may find interesting. When they arrested the shooter, they keep showing you a picture of him in a beard, okay? The reason the police use that old picture, and you don't see a police logo in the bottom right-hand corner, is they did not want me to be able to match up the real arrest picture with the video I have of the killer walking by my store the night Tiffany died. So any of the investigative people that you know can do some real simple requests. That is why the district attorney in this murder never used one single video of Tiffany with her killers at the bar that night, because they don't want us to see that, yes, that is the exact outfits that both Michelle Warden-Brosey wore, Joshua Robinette wore, and Daniel Burnell, the shooter, wore in the bar, the video that night outside my store just hours before Tiffany was killed.
So this is something which is, I mean, have you been stitched up? I mean, the main thing about going back to the psychiatrists is that they're actually programmed that if you start talking about this stuff, they will then they'll take advantage of that. It's part of psychiatry.
Yeah, and Tiffany knew, and I believe was fearful. Now, let me say this. Jonathan Weidman, who's a current therapist downtown Portland, I reported 3 times in the state of Oregon. The first time I reported him right after Tiffany's death, and I still did not understand what the meaning of these words were that he said, like follow the yellow brick road and so on. The first time, the state said they would have to contact him in order to open an investigation.
Well, the yellow brick road thing sounds like Alice in Wonderland programming. Alice, there's a lot of triggers built into that they use in the programming.
Hers was follow the yellow brick road. Disney.
Yeah.
I mean, excuse me, Wizard of Oz.
Yes, Wizard of Oz. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, hers was Wizard of Oz, and Fritz Springmeier, who most people would assume is a very well versed in this.
Yes, he is. I mean, I was on air with him on the Joanna Hart show a couple of days ago, but I wasn't clear whether he had taken the money off you.
Yeah, he stole from me personally. Yes. What happened was that
I just wanted to make that clear.
Excuse me?
So I mean, he is setting himself up as a mind control expert, but you're saying that he's playing both sides of the coin.
I believe he's a mind control expert, but I also believe that anybody under mind control who reaches out to him is in for a rude awakening, because not only does he for instance, he knew since day one about Tiffany's murder, but he's not telling the truth about it, the dams and everything, because he was threatened.
What is
most importantly, Miles, is that when I left, and here's the thing, Kathy O'Brien herself emailed me and said, John, you have to be careful who you trust right now, because you're very vulnerable and they will attack you. And I would hug her if I never met her, but she emailed me that personally, and she is so right. And another thing I want to point out about her while I have the chance, is that her husband, Mark Phillips, told me, John, you can't talk to her, when you want, like I've been, when I was emailing her back and forth. And I want to thank him for saying that, because if I would have done what he does for her, for Tiffany, if I knew about this stuff, Tiffany would not be dead, because he has to stop her from talking to the public, because they will re-trigger her back. But my point is, when I learned about this stuff from Fritz, I left to go to Washington, D.C. to look for help. He was making my daily deposits at my retail store that I own in Portland, of which, for the month that he was there, because I was leaving and I didn't have anybody I could trust, and I thought since he was a Christian or whatever he claims, that I could trust him. He actually stole $34,000 of my money. He is not a good person. Now, does he know a lot about mind control? Yes. Did he tell me Tiffany was under mind control? Yes. But he's just not a good person. That's the bottom line.
Well, this is a problem because a lot of people are going to go to Fritz, and I mean, this is for
Well,
help.
and Kathy was spot on. She said, "Be careful." She said she didn't trust him either, but she said, "Be careful. You're very vulnerable right now." And in the end, he stole 34,000. And I still have the envelopes and the voicemails that he called, and he said, "Well, I had to pay my taxes and my rent." And I said, "Well, what does that got to do with my store?" He could have just about put me out of business. Now, and probably that's what they want. Here's the thing: he's not telling the public the truth about Tiffany's murder because he wants to save his own, butt. And in addition to that, he stole 34,000. Now, if nobody puts themselves in a position to be vulnerable and let him make the store's deposits, then I don't think they'll have the ability to steal. But the guy doesn't even own his own books. He sold them to other people, and then he collects. It's not that he's not smart about mind control. He knows everything about it. It's that he takes people's vulnerability and uses it to pay his rent. And I think that that's sad. I think that's really sad. And it could have just put me out of business, but it didn't.
But I mean, the point about this is he doing it disingenuously? Is that blatant theft, or is he saying if you come to me, I charge a fee or something like that?
Well, no, it's not like that at all because I was he was supposed to make my deposits and he stole my money. And believe me, what in God's name? I mean, there was no talks about that at all. I did give him $3,400 to help me. That was separate. The $34,000 that he stole were my daily deposits for my store. And he bought a car. I mean, duh.
How long did it take you to twig on this?
Excuse me?
How long did it take you to realize this was happening?
With Fritz?
Yeah.
Well, as soon as I got back from New York, I asked him for my deposit slips. And he came to me and told me that he spent all the money. I have all the envelopes and his initials that he picked the money up from my store because I didn't want to leave the money in the Dropbox for that long a period. So I gave him the key to my Dropbox, because at this point Kathy was spot on. I was vulnerable. I needed help. I didn't know what to trust.
Well, does that mean that Fritz was triggered himself to do that?
I would believe yes, he was. I believe so. Either that or he's a very evil, horrible, horrible person. But I do believe he's under mind control also, yes.
So in essence, the mind control books that he's writing are themselves mind control devices.
I think at one point they weren't. But now, based on how he skirts the subject, right, he's not telling the truth, and that's the problem. See, as many people are out there just blatantly telling the truth, right, or just flat out pushing the truth, he's talking about whether we eat healthy or not. See, because now what they've done is they're taking him, I believe, and this is only my opinion, they're taking him and twisting the knowledge. Yes, he wrote the books about mind control, but now he's making the conversation about whether you take your vitamins or not. There are millions of people under mind control in the world who are desperately seeking help. He's not the person to give it to you, and he's certainly not a Christian because Christians wouldn't steal from somebody.
Well, I think we had a discussion on the radio with Christine Joanna Hart about the whole Christian faith thing. Is the original Christianity, the original, I don't want to get into a discussion about that, but I mean, Christianity itself is one of the most heinously abused mind control devices on the planet.
Yeah. Well, let me say this. By the time I met Fritz, I was desperate for help, as I should have been. I would not recommend anybody contact him at all, and because I don't think that it will help. I do believe that his books are accurate in terms of programming codes, it's deeper insights into the Illuminati. But do I feel like he is helping or hurting? He is absolutely hurting the cause, because that $34,000 that he stole from me could have been used to help Tiffany's case, which, Fritz knows that Tiffany ran the dams. Fritz knows she's under mind control. He's the one that told me. And he said he needed to keep it quiet so he was able to help me more. But in the end, there are a lot of people looking to him so they can connect the dots of mind control.
Well, the point about this, going back to the dams, is this is obviously an extremely strategically important resource for the United States. And if we're talking about having this discussion on an open telephone line, and obviously you've raised this issue before with David Icke and who else?
Richi Allen and Kathy O'Brien, Mark Phillips.
But how did they approach? How did they see the dams issue? Because this is, I mean, if these.
Well, I think that first of all, when I met with David Icke, we had a quick lunch together before his show in Manchester, I believe it was. New Zealand, excuse me. And both me and him were held up at immigration for 4 or 5 hours, and it was pathetic. I think that's what made me know I needed to talk to him, was because he told me that he was held up at immigration, and I get held up every time.
Sorry, okay. Have you flying in? Are you with David Icke flying into New Zealand?
No, we were on different flights. We missed each other by 3 hours, the immigration officer said. But the American...
Sorry, which country are we in?
What?
Which country are we in?
When?
When you were with David Icke or missing? I'm a bit... Are we in the States? Are you in England? Manchester Airport?
No, I left Kuala Lumpur on my way to New Zealand. Now, David Icke, I don't know where he had come from because I hadn't met him yet. And so what I did was I didn't make any reservations at all, because I can't really, for my own safety. But I went to by the time I got on the plane, was getting on the 30 minutes before my flight, the Kuala Lumpur immigration handed me the phone and said, New Zealand wants to talk to you. Because I had booked my ticket to David Icke's show, and because I had just bought my ticket 3 hours before to go to New Zealand, the U.S. immigration had contacted New Zealand to call Kuala Lumpur and talk to me about why I was coming to New Zealand. So that discussion went on, and the plane was ready to leave, and the lady at immigration in New Zealand told me, yes, we'll let you come. I got on the plane and came. I landed in New Zealand. They interrogated me for 3 hours about my purpose here. I told them I care about humanity, and I wanted to go to David Icke's show. I went to David Icke's, prior to his show, they let me in the country, which was comical. I said, you guys spend millions of dollars trying to research this stuff. I'll pay for your $100 ticket, and you can just go to his show and learn all this stuff for free. And then in addition to that, I said, and by the way, here's copies of a CD of my girlfriend under mind control, and she was in charge of the dams. And they go, well, we're not allowed to accept gifts. I said, well, it's not really a gift. This is pretty important stuff here. But I went to the venue where David Icke was performing in New Zealand and requested the manager of the facility to contact him, of which she did. And he then that day came to my hotel, and we sat down with him and his son, and we talked about Tiffany, of which right away he said, oh, yeah, she looks like a typical, mind control victim of the Illuminati, blonde hair, blue eyes, so on. He listened to the recordings. He was amazed by it all. He later talked about it, the mind control, and then had me go on the Richi Allen show and talk about Tiffany's murder there and the dams as well. But clearly the goal is to shut me up. They even tried to claim that I hacked into her stuff in order to get these recordings because they don't want the public to hear what I have to say. And it's not even my story. I'm only playing what Tiffany said before she died. So this idea that their family or her family tries to demonize me, I mean, it's a no-brainer. They're trying to say I'm bad so that my recordings aren't true. Well, that's the good news. They're not me. They're Tiffany, crying for help. Tiffany saying she's going to die. And so they have a hard time with me, mostly because I had the money to leave the country, of which I did for a year and a half until I got that judgment reversed in the Court of Appeals in Oregon. And anybody who wants to look it up, it's under Captain, by the way. I can't really say the other person, but if you just go to Oregon Court of Appeals and type in the last name versus Captain, Captain, you will then come across the Court of Appeals decision on my case, of which they said everything that the lower courts did was unconstitutional. But that doesn't matter because I still had to spend all the money to get it to that level, and it took me a year and a half to get that released. They were trying to put a muzzle on me.
So what's actually did the police say, and what did you get reversed so people know what this is about?
Okay, well, Tiffany's mother needed me to shut up about the murder. She emailed me, John, you either stop talking about the murder of Tiffany or we'll see you in court. And they saw me in court. They filed for a restraining order. They called it an elderly abuse claim, where me talking about Tiffany's murder is abuse. And I of course, it never held the hearing when they were supposed to. So they were supposed to have a hearing. The police served me, and I had a restraining order, and it was in effect for a little over a year and a half, I believe. By the way, they expire in 12 months. But the Court of Appeals took 16 months just to come to fruition. But so as the Court of Appeals heard the case, then they waited another 3 months to decide. So it took forever. And the claim was made that I was abusing Tiffany's mother by telling the truth in the murder. And so the Court of Appeals said, no, his words were not abusive. In fact, reverse of that, they were not abusive at all in any way, shape, or form, and you violated his rights. But, it cost me over $10,000 to take it to the Court of Appeals, and all the Court of Appeals did was say the lower courts violated my rights, but they reversed it and remanded it back to the lower court. Then I waited 3 more months because they hadn't released my name off of this restraining order to stop talking. And it was last week. In fact, they were supposed to have court the 27th of February, 2017. And that court was supposed to start over, this court for Tiffany's mother. She later then claimed to the courts that she did not have the money to fight me in court. And then the case was dropped. But the real reason that she did drop the case is because the lower court said I have the legal right to question both Richard Lovett, who's Tiffany's handler, by the way, in Portland, Oregon, Lovett, Richard A. Lovett is Tiffany's handler. I had the legal right to question him and Tiffany's mother in this case. And I had a whole list of things I wanted to ask because everything they got to say they wanted to say, and it was all lies. I never got the option to ask them, well, what about the murder of Tiffany? Does that matter to you? So they knew that I had the legal right this time to question them about this murder, and prior to that, I was stopped.
So this is a pretty complicated. It's not a mess. It's It's clearly a horrific thing. What I'm trying to figure out is is there any information about the dams? But I mean, this is possibly we've got Tiffany who's dead, but what did they do to those dams? Is there anything on that?
Yeah, in the recordings with Tiffany's therapist, she told that God, I wish I could play it for you here. I can't play it while you're on the phone. But
the easiest thing would be just to send me the file.
Yeah, it's all on Google, too, if you just type in Tiffany Jenks murder. I put it on YouTube. But to answer the question, Tiffany said that she was in control of 21 dams and that a lot of people were going to die. Now, what context or what you read into her words are certainly subjective, but if you put into context the fact that she said that she didn't want people to die, that she cared, and then she said that, she'd settle for darkness trying to stop this New World Order type stuff. She didn't say the New World Order, by the way. She said words that and so I'll have to
what did she say?
Send you the file, because I don't really know the meaning of some of this stuff. But
because the reason for that is the New World Order thing is a public label, which is often misused.
Yeah. I'm going to try to read you some of the stuff. Let me click off this, but if I lose you, I'll call you right back. Let me try this. Hold on. Okay, so far it's letting me. So I have some typed words that I will read to you. Okay, so this is Tiffany and her doctor. She says, what the hell is a parlor trick? And he says, the doctor, Jonathan Weidman. I'm just going to say he each time it's him. Look it up on Google. Let me tell you what it is. You want a specific death wish, to give you a specific death wish. Okay, so that's one part. Now I'm going to go on. So, okay, yeah, here she says, tell me more about this place. This is 4 days before she was dead, right? So it's really important to note, what is this place they're talking about, right? Whether it's underground camp or whatever. Okay, here's one. Okay, you're all screwed up spiritually. That's why you can't let people into your life. And I'm telling you, you can't let the shit in. You can't be like, I'm all open for it, because you know what? Everything will come and take you. And Tiffany said, I know it's wrong. I know it's wrong. I've always known it's wrong. And he said, yes, but remember what you said once when you were getting treated? You have weak paracharacter, meaning you have strong triple burner, or at least at one point you did, meaning your outside walls are pretty good. But once you let somebody in, you're all screwed up because they'll just ride. And then she said, Tiffany said, I never let anybody in. He got in. But I mean, you know, he was talking through my dad, and my dad had unfinished business. Now, mind you, her dad was already dead, right? And then the doctor says, you know what I tell Chinese medicine practitioners? People who do what I do don't get involved in witchcraft. Because you know what? The majority of people are never going to have the training and understanding to deal with this stuff, the energetic, spiritual stuff on a true level. And then Tiffany says, what's up with this guy? Now, she's talking about the killers, but he thinks she's talking about me. And he says, poor choices on your part. Okay, here we go. So Tiffany talked about dying. She goes, here. She says, I do need to follow the path. I need to follow the yellow brick road. And thank you. You do need to follow the yellow brick. This is a doctor. You do need to follow the yellow brick road. If you think your time is short, like you said 4 or 5 times, you ain't got much time. If you're already thinking your time is short, you need to clean up your shit, get it going, and do what you need to do. You know, the only way that God can help, God or spirit or whatever can help you is if you're empty. And the only way you can be empty, I'm full right now, is you need to ditch all this stuff and match meditation. If you keep mucking around with like negative people, vampires, people who are embodying demons and zombies, you're not going to go anywhere because their whole purpose is to keep you down. And Tiffany said, I see something in there. I know when I can make a difference. And this is important. Here we go. This is a doctor speaking 4 days before she was dead. Let me explain it to you in a different way. There's a war going on between the light and the dark. And the people of the light are being attacked by people of the dark. And I will tell you, that's going to get a lot worse. And Tiffany said, they know who I am. And he said, they don't know who you are, and you should never tell anybody who you are. All right? Nobody that doesn't know doesn't need to know. You know why? Because it will make you a target, and targets get shot at first.
That was useful advice.
Yeah, no kidding. And she said, I don't talk about it to people, but I'm telling you that they know who I am. And then he thinks she's talking about me, and he says, well, anything this fella told you? And she says, no, he has no idea about this. He doesn't know anything about this. And he goes, okay, I wouldn't discuss that. And she says, no, he doesn't know anything about this. Then just like be with it. That's internal power. Don't feel lost, because there's a lot of people. You don't strike me as anything but human. And she says, I know. And he says, and whether or not you are, and we are, and whether you are or not, and she says, it's not like I'm going to differentiate myself from the crow. And then he says, the things that are not human that are walking amongst us are different. Don't play like you're human. There's no forgiveness like being human. And Tiffany said, the thing is, and then this is where she's under mind control and she starts to pass out because you can hear it ruffling her phone. And she says, I don't know if you met me, and I don't think I've met you before. Dude, really? And the doctor said, I am who I am. And then she says, I know that sounds really crazy. How do you think it feels when you find out that your life is a scam? And the doctor says, tap, tap, tap on the table. If you knew who you were from when you were a child, it would not be a good thing. And Tiffany's voice changes to a baby, and it says, I do. I got a long story. And he says, I'm sure you do. And then she goes on, and it says, I don't think I'm a dark angel. And Tiffany says, the doctor says, I don't think I'm a dark angel. And Tiffany says, I don't think I'm a dark angel either. And doctor said, I don't know who you are. So, but I want you to know, and she said, but I want you to know, I'm not like your other patients, and I'm not mentally insane. And he said, no, you're not mentally insane. You're like a lot of my other patients. Why do you think people like you come to see me? Let me say it like this. You need to act like it. She said, this guy I dated said, I love you. I said, act like it. And then the doctor said, act like it then. So let's see here. She wanted him to map her life.
Why did she go to this particular therapist? I mean, how did he get in the picture?
I have no way to know that. I know that she recorded 2 sessions with him, less than 5 days. One was 4 days, one was 5 days, before she was dead, where he told her she was going to get shot. He says, people get shot at first. And she was confiding in him. And basically, I don't have a way to know how she knew him. He did say in the recordings that you're an old patient who has a lot of problems and haven't come to see me. He also said, Tiffany said, why do I have to have all these demons in my head? And the therapist said, you have always had demons in your head. You like dark things. And then also when he hypnotizes her, he says, remove what you know from when you were a child. Remove what you know from when you were a child.
And was she able to do that? Obviously not.
Oh, of course not. How could you, right? Yeah.
But he must have been on her case. I mean, how old is this guy?
He's about her age. I think he's between 35 and 40.
So maybe he was in the program, but I mean, that's just speculation.
Yes, without a question. No, without a question he is. Because he hypnotized her and told her to follow the yellow brick road.
Which must go back to childhood or some other or earlier time.
Well, no, he's just a handler for the mind control. He's one of the, so Richard A. Lovett was her handler and her ex-roommate before she met me. And he claimed that Tiffany was just fine before I met her, which was when she had $192,000 in medical. That was a 100% lie. But so he's involved in the cover-up of the murder as well. So as long as they could not allow one part of this murder to come to light, then they can remain, innocent victims on the side. But, Tiffany left so much information that she was going to die, they're having a really hard time stopping me.
It's almost a little bit like Lady Diana.
Yeah, it is. And there's 2 sides of the story. There's the truth, which is what I'm just telling you what was said. It's not my story. So there's the truth about what Tiffany said or did, or emails she sent me about dying. And then, of course, and anybody could say, well, some things are my opinion, but 99% of what I'm claiming or what I'm saying is just her words. They're not mine. Yeah. Yeah, so the doctor says the only one who's controlling you is you, right after he hypnotized her. Let's see here. Yeah, and then in terms of her work at the dams, there's no question that she was a mind control victim. And then because we have evidence that proves it, for instance, her being hypnotized and all the writing she wrote to me about it. And then since she ran the dams, you have to ask yourself, is it safe for the Illuminati to be in control of the dams? And that's up to each individual to decide for themselves. I believe it's absolutely ludicrous.
I mean, this is something that the FBI or somebody should be dealing with. But what's happening?
There's not a question about it. Many people have said. Well, I think it was David Souter that emailed me something like he was trying to. Somebody was complaining to him that they were going to call the FBI on him, and he said, "Yeah, that'd be great because I've been trying to get a hold of him for a year." So any FBI agent, any police officer, anybody, any government official. Anybody with integrity who contacts me is welcome to all the facts of this case. And I will fly anywhere in the world and meet anybody that can tell the truth. What I have are facts that tell the truth about a murder and a conspiracy to commit murder. And what has transpired is the killers got out of jail with a $200 fine, 2 of the 3 of them. So, I suppose I'll have to wait until they kill again to get my truth out. Or I suppose the Illuminati will have to get another person running the dams again before I get my truth out. But I have no problem telling my story to anybody with integrity, and thus far, I haven't met one government worker that has any.
Are they all warned off?
Yes. In fact, the Portland police officer, his name is Higginbotham, Higginbotham.
Yeah.
He was a Portland police officer who told me, and I have it recorded, he was told to stand down and not help me.
Well, maybe we need to adopt a different strategy, because clearly going to the forces
Absolutely.
of law and order it isn't going to help.
I think what has to happen is some people who are now. Here's the thing: whether I was chosen or not, I don't know, but it certainly backfired to some extent for them because I've been able to erratically get to the right people. And I mean, like I said, I went to Arizona to find you. Unfortunately, I missed you that day, but I don't tell anybody where I'm going or what I'm doing simply to stay alive, I believe.
Crikey, I had about 3 people trying to find me that day, at least I got one of them.
Yeah, and so my point is that, when I showed up to meet with David Icke, I didn't tell anybody I was going to meet David Icke. I went there and was lucky enough that he took the time to meet with me and we talked over lunch. But I went to find you. I didn't tell you in advance I was going there. So here's the thing. If Tiffany's story can be told, it will change the world forever in the eyes of everybody in this whole realm, because you have a mind control victim who's running the dam. And for the people that are in the public, if they don't believe mind control is real, like I was, okay, so I'm so far removed from this stuff, I'm with them. I get that they don't understand it. But with what I have, Tiffany's story will prove that mind control is real. Now, people like you and others that have worked a lifetime on this stuff, you get the inside part of this. But her story should bring to light all the people who absolutely think we're all cuckoo nuts now, or that they don't believe us. It will bring a lot of people forward because her story is so truthful and compelling. And I think it's really a good thing, And I think that, Max Spear's story, Tiffany Jenks' story, I mean, it's just it's really coming to light now more than ever.
Well, we're having this conversation on the first time the BBC's put the Max Spear stuff out on their network, on their internet-only network.
Unbelievable.
They haven't broadcast it. It's not broadcast as such.
Yes.
Well, we're into the first hour, and we're recording this on the mobile phone right beside the landline phone.
Excellent.
How do you wish to proceed to sort of enabling this into a further, further steps?
To finish my conversation that I stopped having, because I have ADHD, and that's what I was trying to make a point, and I lost my point. So I want to tell you and others that having ADHD is both a blessing and a curse. I can't write well, and it's also personal. So people that can write can read into the clues starting from the first day I posted and working forward. But Tiffany Jenks' murder case should not revolve around the fact that John Captain has ADD and can't write. I mean, I went to 12 schools in 12 years. So my ability to write well is horrible. That's both a blessing and a curse. They never know what I'm doing because I don't even know what I'm doing. So therefore, they have a hard time so far stopping me. And I'm not taunting this situation. I'm just telling you how I feel. The next step in this case is to bring to light Tiffany's murder. Not John's opinion, but the fact. And how we get to that is by the help of your, listeners, your public, and you, and others that are knowledgeable about this stuff. And as they write it, it will make more sense. Because, having somebody can't write about something so complex is horrible.
Well, we're able to get it in verbal, as a verbal statement, but combining it with her recordings should move it a lot further. Did she do any video?
Yes, I have video of me and her talking, but not about those sorts of things. More on a personal note. We were interviewing each other in our life because we had just bought an iPad. But she never talked about any of these things on video.
Well, we can combine that in a different way, and with pictures and situations. Like when a situation is, I mean, this is just a technique. It's not really. If she's talking about an event or like the dams or a location, we could use images of that visually to help illustrate what's been said verbally.
Yes, and the thing is, the therapist therapist Jonathan Weidman, downtown Portland, who's still a therapist today, obviously is involved because of the recordings, and other people who have seen him should then become a way for us to reach out to them, to ask them, do you believe you're a victim of mind control? Because he is he's continuing the programming. But in the recordings, he says, and I quote, "Tiffany, are you recording?" And she said, "Yes." And then at the end of the recording, because they want to make claims that this is not Jonathan Weidman, but I'm going to tell you how you know it is. At the end of the recording, Tiffany says to him, "Jonathan, where's your office?" And he says, 2 blocks that way, 1130 Southwest Morrison. So he says his address because they were at a restaurant when they met. And Tiffany says, "Jonathan, where's your office?" And he says, 2 blocks that way, 1130 Southwest Morrison. See, because they all along have tried to claim that it's not Jonathan Weidman, her therapist. However, I already had 2 people confirm that that's his voice. In addition to that, he says his address, so just to let you know.
Well, there's voice print analysis, which can prove that. Voice print.
All you have to do is call him on the phone and ask him for an appointment. You'll hear his voice. But he says his address in the recording, and it's Tiffany's therapist. So there's no question. But there's about 20 other ways to know it's him, too. But I already know for sure it is. I've already had it confirmed by 2 people.
So why did he allow her to still record if he knew that she was recording?
She did record, and this is not about somebody unhappy because a husband or wife cheated. This is a murder. The first issue of order in this case should be Tiffany's best interest, and I don't give a damn what law was broken. Tiffany recorded herself. She said she was recording, and I put it out there because it's the right thing to do for her. Now, if he doesn't like it, I welcome him to contact the court to take me to court over it. That has never happened, and he won't because he knows the truth. First of all, he hasn't even admitted it's him. So I'm only putting out there her recording with her therapist, Jonathan Weidman, because she got shot in the head, and he doesn't seem to mind the fact that he told her she was going to die.
What are you suggesting there exactly? Are you suggesting maybe that he assisted in programming her to meet her death?
Yes, that's what I'm claiming. Yes.
Which means you're suggesting that he's complicit. That's first degree murder. That's first degree murder then.
Well, Miles, if you look at the problem with mind control, where does the abuse start? Who's responsible for her death? The people that programmed her, right?
Yeah.
So clearly, you can see then why they want to shut me up.
Oh yes, it's in their interest to make you look like a fool.
Yeah, but good news is, it's not my word. I'm not the one going tap, 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 follow the yellow brick road. I'm not like Kathy O'Brien. I'm not telling you my life experience. I'm simply putting forward the facts of Tiffany's murder. And that's different than any other case you've ever seen. It's not my story. Tiffany said she was going to die. She ended up dead. Why? That's the first step of this murder. If you don't believe in mind control, then whatever. But if you listen to her murder and you listen to the recordings that she made on my phone because she knew they were going to kill her, it's a little hard to deny that it's not my words. It's Jonathan Weidman talking to Tiffany about getting shot in the head 4 days before she was shot in the head.
Well, we need to initiate how to get this together, and the first thing is obviously that you send me a copy of the material.
Yes, I will. So we'll end this recording, and then we'll talk on another note.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to stop the recording now. The recording at 1 hour and 8 minutes, 55 seconds.